Hey everyone, Sparrow here. A little bit of a different video today. I thought it would be fun to start off the new year 2024, Happy New Year by the way, with a video that is Planet Zoo related but not quite Planet Zoo. So I'm going to show you a little bit of behind the scenes with the map design for True North Sanctuary. The zoo is complete, as you could probably tell from the screenshot from above of the entire zoo, and that screenshot is our starting point for this map. I've also got a bunch of the assets used on the other signage laid out on the side just to streamline things as we go. I do hope you find this video interesting and informative. Make sure to leave me a like if you do. Also, check out the description box for some links to free online editing software you could use in place of Adobe Illustrator. It might be a bit more limited, but hey, at least it's free. One last thing before we truly get started, it's 2024 and something I'm trying to do this year is support causes I believe in. Enter Tab for a Cause. This browser extension raises donations for various charities with the click of a button, every time you open a new tab in fact. There are so many causes you can support, ranging from humanitarian organizations to educational groups to climate change and animal justice supports. Every time you open a new tab, you gain a heart, and those hearts can then be donated to the charity of your choice. It's not much, but it's a passive way to support others while doing something you're likely to be doing anyway, opening tab after tab. If this sounds like something you'd like to try, click the referral link in the description below and join me in helping the world just a little bit, one tab at a time. So we are starting off the map design with the buildings, and that just means a bunch of rectangles rotated this way and that. Some of the buildings require a few rectangles, so I draw each one separately, just click and drag to the desired size, and then join them together to create one shape that's easy to move around. You may have noticed at the beginning of the video a line of boxes in various colors along the side of the artboard, and those are the main color palette for this map. I place them there just to make it easier to grab the colors when necessary. The buildings will be this dark charcoal color, so they're easy to see. They'll be sitting on top of basically everything else on the map, so we're kind of doing this backwards, but starting with the habitats would make it difficult to see the map underneath, so I always like to start with the smaller details and then just rearrange everything afterwards. With the buildings done, it's onto the plazas and guest paths. For larger areas such as this one, I find it easier to draw out the contours of the plaza rather than making a bunch of pen strokes that fill up the space. So the plaza is going to be a large shape that will sit under the habitat and building shapes later. Might need to adjust the transparency on it to make sure the points are following the edges of the plaza. Then for the paths, instead of outlining them, it'll just be a single pen stroke, and the width of the stroke I'm going to adjust depending on the width of the path. So main paths, which I believe I made 8 meters in-game, are going to be 16 points, or double the in-game path width, and then we'll do the same for the other paths, 6 meter paths to 12 points, 4 meter paths to 8 points, and so on. I find paths the most annoying to do, mostly because there is a lot of them, but also because they generally don't have straight edges like the buildings do. They're usually curvy and all over the place. So I'm at least thankful this is a flat map and not isometric, and I don't need to worry about the height variations in the path as well. There are a lot of different ways to create zoo maps. I highly recommend doing a quick Google search if you're trying to make a map and seeing what real-world inspiration is out there. And even maps for other places like museums and art galleries and theme parks. There are so many ways to display information. Really, as long as any map you design has the guest experience in mind, is easy to read, and looks somewhat nice, that's a win in my books. We're going to move on to the back roads and staff paths. This is more so to fill space than to direct guests, but as a guest at a zoo, I personally like seeing some of these backstage things, like where do the animals get delivered to their habitats, and how do the staff get around the zoo, because their experience is so different from the guest experience, and I kind of like living vicariously through the keepers sometimes. So the roads will be another dark gray. I believe I change it from the black because it's just too stark against all of the other colors, and the staff paths are going to be a slightly darker beige, tan, whatever you'd like to call that color, so they're a little less visible than the guest paths, but still not disappearing into the eventual background. Finally, the moment you've probably been waiting for, since we're all animal lovers here, the enclosures. These will be once again drawn using the pen tool, marking some of the corners and creating both straight and curved lines where necessary. Since these objects will largely be sitting furthest back with the paths and buildings over top of them, it's okay for the edges to be a bit messy. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time trying to follow the exact contours of the path I've drawn out. It's not something we're going to see in the end result anyway. Which brings me to what I find is probably the hardest part of design and creating in general, whether it be a map in Adobe Illustrator, an enclosure in Planet Zoo, or even an eyeshadow look for those of you who wear makeup. When you first start out, that blank canvas is super overwhelming. It's like it's just staring at you, waiting for you to mar it with your mistakes, and once you start, it kind of looks like crap for a while before something starts to come out of it. I feel like this all the time with a lot of things in life, really, so I think it's important to keep the end goal in mind and remember that there are so many little things coming together to create the final result. You just have to trust the process. And that's a hard thing to do, so if you do it over and over again, good for you, I'm proud of you. With some color changes to the enclosures to better show the different sections of the zoo, we're going to slap down a background around it, loosely based on the fence that runs around the perimeter of the zoo, mostly to give the map a backdrop and fill in the spaces that are not filled by buildings, paths, or enclosures. Also, since we do have some important elevation changes with a few mountains in the zoo, I'm going to throw those in, make it a very slight color change from the background so it looks like a topographic map in those spaces. And then it's time to arrange all of these shapes in the way they were meant to be viewed. Background in the back, obviously, any plazas sitting on top of it, enclosures on top of that, paths brought forward, and finally buildings on top of everything. There were some small adjustments in specific places, such as making sure the Arctic Wolf land bridge is visible over the top of the path, but those were a quick and easy fix. We also have a few large bodies of water that are pretty important because they are home to various waterfowl. So I outlined our pond in the plaza behind the Boreal Cafe and also used the pen tool to create a rough outline of the lake and waterfall that bleeds into the moose and beaver habitat. Now that we have all of these shapes on the map, we need a way to show where certain things are, such as restrooms, where you can buy admission, where the parking lots are, if there are certain important buildings, and so on. Luckily, I had already created a bunch of icons for the wayfinding banners in the zoo, so it was a case of copying and pasting those icons onto tiny, like 20 pixel in diameter circles and placing those around the map where needed. We also need a legend, so on this third of the map, we're going to add some titles for each section of the zoo: Prairie Pathway, Woodland Walk, Mountain Hike, and Arctic Zone, as well as an animal list of which species you can find where. You can probably see that blue guideline there showing me where the map is divided up by the in-game billboards. It ended up being the map itself, a 2-meter square panel, and then the legend divided up between two 1-meter square panels on this side. Underneath we'll have each icon that was placed around the map with a quick description of what it represents. Many of them are pretty intuitive, such as restrooms and parking, but a few of the zoo-specific ones, such as Beaver Lodge, NLS Polar Center, and others are less so. So we'll have the names of the buildings next to their icons. If you're not familiar with these buildings and you've somehow found your way to this video, make sure to check out the final tour of Truna Sanctuary linked up at the top of the video. And if you're enjoying this, do make sure to leave a like, maybe subscribe for more Planet Zoo content. You do you. In a similar fashion to the icons, we need to know where each animal is, so I'll be numbering the animals from 1 to 27 and then using that same black circle to number the enclosures on the map. We'll just add a number 1 to the first, copy them all around, and then replace the numbers as we go to match up with the legend on the side. This was probably the most annoying part of this design, but we're in the home stretch and, dare I say, the map is looking quite good. And just like that, we have a completed map. Here it is in the zoo on one of the map stations, some pamphlets guests can take with them at the bottom. Thank you so much for joining me. See you next time. Bye.